Okay, sorry here, just give me 1 second. All right, so thank you all for coming out tonight to our virtual Drive Electric Week dialogue. A couple quick announcements before we get started, and then we're going to have a quick video to prompt us on the 3 vehicles that we're going to be looking at this evening. And then we will go ahead and have a robust Q&A session and some questions that I'll be prompting us with to begin with. Couple of quick announcements. In the chat box, there's a pre-event survey, which my colleague Han is going to post in there again. And then there's going to be like an avalanche of like links coming at you. We just have a lot of events this week, and so we want to make sure that everyone knows what's going on. First off, big thanks to Jason, David, and Hugh for lending us their time and their expertise and their cars for this event. We were notified about 2 weeks ago that we received a grant to do this event, and only about 10 days ago had the information on how to pull it off. So it was a quick turnaround time, and I think we ended up with a really great product, and I think you guys will enjoy it. So thank you all for being here, and for Eddie G, our videographer, for putting it together. This week we have a lot going on. It's the run up to our Earth Day event on Sunday, which is taking place at Shelton Park in Claremont. We have some different walking tours that we're going to be doing. We have environmental, sustainability, conservation, exhibitor booths that are going to be at the park. It's going to be a really great event, pretty low key, but a good opportunity for you to come with your families, to take walking tours about tree identification, about foraging, to check out our e-bike display, and a whole lot of other activities that we're really looking forward to. Tomorrow, we have our Earth Day party and fundraiser at the Garner House at Memorial Park in Claremont. We'd love to see you there. We're going to have a great silent auction with some Patagonia stuff. We're going to have treats from Creme Bakery. We're going to have some great beer from Andy Dale's Last Name Brewery. Cheese Cave, Electric City Butcher is going to be there. So really great stuff, really fun kickback event from 6 to 8 o'clock tomorrow. And again, the links for all of this stuff is going to be in the chat box. Tonight, what we're going to have is, it's going to kind of feel like a cross between our normal dialogue series and our Green Home Tour that we did way back in June. So we're going to start out with a quick video. It's about 10 minutes long, and it's going to tell us some of the basic facts about the vehicles that we're going to be looking at. So we're going to be looking at 2 electric vehicles and 1 plug-in hybrid. And then we're going to have some guided discussion and some time for Q&A. If you have questions during the video or during the Q&A when I'm talking to David and Jason and Hugh, you can feel free to type those questions into the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we'll try to get to all the questions along the way. Han and myself, we try to collect all the questions while they're being entered into the chat box. We usually get to all of them, but if we don't, we could work on the back end to get you responses to your questions after the event's over. Okay. Oh, one last event that I don't want to forget is that on Sunday, we're also going to be having the Garden Club of Sustainable Claremont is going to be having their garden tour. So again, we'll drop the link to that, and I encourage you all to attend. Okay, so with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump into our program here. And let me just go ahead and share my screen so I could start the video for us. So just give me 1 second here, please. Okay. Can you give me a thumbs up if you could see that? Okay, great. So here we go.
Hi, I'm Hugh Cox. I'm with Sustainable Claremont. My wife and I share a Toyota RAV4 Prime, year 2021, so we got it just about a year ago. It's a plug-in electric, and we've been really very pleased with it. So we had a Prius before, and we wanted to move on, and we really needed something that was a little bit bigger and also could go off-road a little bit better. So this fit that need. We really wanted to get an electric, but we couldn't really find a good electric vehicle that had the capacity to go off-road and had the kind of trunk space and cargo space that we needed, and stumbled upon the RAV4, and it seemed like a great option. You know, it's been great driving on the freeways here. The modern technology, and I don't think this is true just of, you know, the plugins, but it's got lane assist and all of those things, and cruise control, radar enhanced cruise control. So it's been really easy and really comfortable driving on the roads, but it's also been very solid off-road. It's got features that allow you to, you know, shift into four-wheel drive if you need to. So I felt like it could get through almost anything that we're going to have to go through. It's not a real four-wheel drive vehicle, but we weren't really looking for that. You know, mostly I'd say I like everything about it. The way it handles, the comfort, kind of the safety features, the ease of charging it. The overall gas mileage, if you will, is amazing. I mean, the first 2 months that we had this, we never filled it up. And we were driving mostly locally, but you know, we'd go on longish trips and still get really good mileage. Yeah, so this is where we plug it in, and we just use a regular 120 volt. You can get a faster charger if you want to install the equipment, but we just plug it in at night and we time it so we're doing it. We're charging when electricity rates are lower, but we can override that pretty easily if we need to charge. I think a lot of people that own hybrids or own EVs also like to obsess about their mileage. And so I do think about it. I try and maximize the mileage. It is really good for local driving. You get really good electric mileage. Longer range, higher speeds, the electric isn't quite as efficient. And so, you know, we do think about when we're getting on the highway to drive a little bit differently or switch it into the hybrid mode. You know, I think that's the direction that we should be going for individual vehicles. You know, there's probably a lot more we could say about the transportation system as a whole, but to the extent that we're talking about individual automobile ownership and use, I think we really should be moving in the direction of electric. There's some limitations now as to how quickly you can recharge them and where you can recharge them. And so I think the plug-in is kind of a great in-between step. It offers sort of a little more flexibility and a little more freedom around that. Our only complaint is it's a little on the dark side inside, and so we leave our phones behind or other things like that. But really, no, it's been a great car.
Hi, my name's David Haley. I'm a resident of Claremont, California, and I drive a 2017 Nissan Leaf. We decided to go with an electric car for errands around town and just in general Southern California. We selected the Leaf because it was one of the oldest, most established electric cars on the market. And so we wanted to go with something that had been tried and true. I have to admit, after 5 years of owning it, I love it. They're great cars. Electric. If you haven't driven one, I highly suggest you go test drive one because they're really fun to drive. They're super quiet. You know, I'm driving around and I get to look at everybody else's tailpipe and I don't have one. It's actually kind of life-altering, actually. So it's a lot quicker. In fact, I have to be a little careful on the throttle. One of the things I like about the Leaf is they have an Econo Mode and a brake mode so that the regenerative braking is on when you're not stepping on the accelerator. And the Econo Mode is a little nice because it cuts the throttle down a little bit so you don't jump off the gun. I've spun the tires a few times when the pavement's wet. I have to admit, especially with gas prices being where they're at, I'm really happy I have an electric vehicle. Through my employer, I get a discount on the charging at my work. And so it costs me about $3 for about 80 miles. The range on this is one of the smaller Leaf packages. You can get them with bigger batteries. This one has a range of about, well, when it was brand new, it had a range of about 120 miles. And we're down to about 100 miles after 5 years. And again, that depends on how you drive it, where you're driving. We have a home charger. Clipper Creek is the name of the charger. And that's been great because we've been able to just plug in at home. They do have a standard 110, the level 1 charger, which comes with every Leaf in case you need to plug into your friend's house or something like that. But that's a very slow charge. The level 2, which we have here, will charge it in about 3 to 4 hours. So that is one thing that I would say about driving an electric car, is you have to plan a little more in advance on where you're going to go and how you're going to fill up the tank, so to speak, because it does take some time. I try to avoid the level 3 charging, which is the quick chargers. Like, I can charge it in about 25 minutes from 0 to 100% about. That might be a little generous, but it's hard on the batteries. And so I've been trying to extend the battery life for as long as I can. So I've lost about 20% of the battery capacity over 5 years. This particular car does not have the range like a Tesla. Like, this is not going to drive to San Francisco on a charge. We might make Barstow before we have to. So it is strictly a local car to the LA area, basically. And again, I think, when we bought this, I don't think they even had the larger battery versions. And so with the advances in battery technology, I think that's good, less and less of a concern. When I get a new one, I will go with a bigger battery. The 100-mile range is a little bit limiting. And really it's nominally 100 miles, but likely because of the way you're driving, especially when you're driving on the freeway, that definitely reduces your range. But I've gotten over the range anxiety. Like, at first I was worried about driving down to Huntington Beach. But there are more and more chargers all the time, and then they're getting easier and easier to find. Again, I just love how quiet they are and the acceleration. They're just fun cars to drive.
I'm Jason Needleman. I'm a Tesla driver, have been for 3 years, and I'm also a professor of political science at the University of Laverne. The main reason I selected it is because I have a long commute and it has an autopilot feature. So when you get on the freeway, you can put it in autopilot and it basically does all the work. And it makes a long commute really relaxing. In fact, it's kind of like changed my whole approach to driving because it's just comfortable to drive now. A lot of the stress is taken away. It even changes lanes. But of course, I also got it because I've always driven environmentally conscious vehicles. And so I was determined for sure. I'd previously driven a hybrid and I was determined for sure to get an electric vehicle. So you get massive acceleration. In terms of like what would be the drivetrain in a combustion engine vehicle, this is just perfectly smooth. There's no torque that has to build before the car starts to accelerate. So as soon as you hit the gas, it's just perfectly smooth in terms of how the car powers itself. In terms of the ride, if you want like a smooth ride, you have to get the Model S. This is more of a sporty ride. It's very comfortable. If you're in the front, people tell me in the back it's a little bit bumpy. I wanted to have a car that didn't burn gas and that had this autopilot feature. Some people think of it as a kind of, oh, you drive a Tesla, that confers a certain status. Honestly, like that's not, for me, the reason I got the car. In fact, I kind of don't like that because people think it marks you out as a kind of, I don't know, highbrow person, even though this car is about the same price as the car I previously drove, which was a Toyota Prius. Okay, well, one thing is, I don't know if I wish this were different, I think it's just a feature of having a battery-powered vehicle. The range of the battery diminishes over time. So initially when I got it and I would charge the car all the way, it would give me a range of 315 miles. Now the top end is down to like 280, maybe even a little bit below that. So, of course, I would prefer to have a battery that has greater range and holds a charge for a longer period of time. But I still can take it pretty much anywhere. There are plenty of Tesla charging stations. I take it into the Sierras, which is a little bit risky because you have to find a place to charge. But typically I'll charge right before I go into the mountains, and then I'll kind of be careful when I'm in there, make sure I can get out to a charging station again. But of course, every month new charging stations open up, and so the range on the vehicle extends. It takes a little bit of time to charge. It's probably a tiny bit less convenient than a gas-powered vehicle, especially one that gets really good mileage, but not much. I mean, you stop for 10 minutes, you charge, and you keep going. In terms of things that I like about it, well, I basically like everything about it, but I'm an easy consumer. Like I've never been one to say like, oh, I wish my car had this feature or that feature. One thing that I do enjoy about it is that all of the controls are contained within a single screen. I think some people, that's not familiar to them, but I do like that. I always say that the Tesla is like if you had an iPhone and it like grew up to be an automobile. And you can still, I mean, you can basically control the car, many of the features through your phone, and then there's a screen there which is kind of like an extension of the phone and allows you to control every element of the car.
Okay, great. Let me turn off the video there 1 second. Okay. All right, great. So the way we're gonna kind of get things kicked off here now that we've seen the video is I've got some questions I'd like to kind of start things off with and kind of get the conversation going. And then again, if folks in the audience who are watching, I think we already got one question in. We'll switch gears in just a bit to those and make sure that we get through all of them. My first question, this sort of came up in one of the conversations we were having when we were filming the video, but we didn't get a chance to add it into the video, was having to deal with the carpool lane stickers, which I think is like an important element of the hybrid for a lot of folks who have a commute. I guess my question is to Hugh and to Jason. Do both of your cars have the sticker on it that you can gain access to the carpool lane? How do you get those? Do they expire? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, our car does have the carpool lane stickers. You apply to DMV for them. It was a relatively simple process. It took a little bit longer than we expected, but the timing was good because I wasn't doing a lot of commuting anyway. My commute when I go back to the office on a regular basis will be to Pasadena. And so one of the motivations of getting a plug-in hybrid for me was to be able to use that carpool lane because the 210 is not really commuter friendly at the times I'd be going through. The few times that I've been on there, it's been great to have that option. So yeah, it's a pretty straightforward process. They do expire after, I believe it's 3 years. So.
And is that something when you purchased the car, they sort of walked you through that process, or did you have to figure that out on your own?
I think we pretty much had to figure it out on our own. They mentioned it, but you really have to go through the DMV.
Okay.
I'm a member of AAA, so we kind of utilize their services to lead us to be the guide on that process.
When I picked up the Tesla, I found this hilarious. I go to pick it up. I don't know, Robert, if you had the same experience. I go to pick it up. Yeah, here's your car. They just like showed me to the questions. I'm like, boy. I'm like, how do I drive this? Did I just drive? If you have any questions, we're happy to answer. But that was it. I had no interaction whatsoever. And I don't have the carpool stickers.
Mm.
Yeah.
I when I drove my Prius, I was eligible for them, and that was the period where they were kind of stopping distributing them, and so I've never actually gotten one.
Do you know if that's something that you can pick up now, like this late in the game, or if that's something that you have to do at the time of purchase? If they expire after 3 years, if Jason hadn't gotten his, in the last 2 years or however long he's had the Tesla, is it too late at that point? Do you know, or?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that once it's eligible, but it's only eligible for the period of time, like the 3-year period of time But please don't quote me on that. I'd have to go and look it up on the DMV site to be certain of that. So.
Okay, we'll edit that from this video.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, great. And then sort of related to the carpool sticker question is just I think a lot of people have questions about the rebates on electric cars and plug-in hybrids. And so that was another question I had is that sort of a process that when you go to purchase a Tesla or you go to purchase a plug-in hybrid, are you paying sticker price and then you get a rebate down the road? Do they tell you how to apply for the rebates? Do they walk you through that process? What does that look like? Because I think we all even on the Tesla website, it shows you a price with and without the rebate. So how does that work?
So some of that is, I think I'm going to go to Robert on this because I know he knows more than I do, but some of it is dependent on how much money you make, because some of it is in the tax code. So you have to qualify it for the rebate. But I know Robert Miller,
that's true. Some of that is how much you make, but now different cars come with different rebates. Union shops get a bigger rebate than Tesla does. So if you're looking for a Tesla, some of that has to do with how many they manufactured, how many rebates have been given out. So, it's pretty simple. The information's there. One of the best suggestions I would tell people is if you're thinking of buying one of these cars, there are wonderful, especially Facebook groups that you could join that will give you every bit of information you've ever wanted.
Yeah, no matter what kind of electric or plug-in, there are just a lot of information groups, and we went that route. The rebate issue or rebate concern was a little confusing, and I think some of that was because the federal rebates were expiring, and then they may have come back online. I'm not sure about that, but then California has their own program, and it really the group of vehicles that were covered by that was changing because it depended on what capacity it had. So I think that's constantly in flux, but it is, it's available.
It's pretty complicated. I have the same with the state. The federal. Basically, I have an accountant and I had him figure it out. It's pretty complicated.
Okay, that's helpful to know. I know that when we were filming at David's house, he had purchased the I'm not sure what the name of the charger is now offhand. I have it in my notes somewhere, but he had installed that supercharger or the 240 watt, 220 watt charger, and he said the rebate process for that was quite easy. And in fact, he received the rebate for that before they had even finished installing it. And I think he had around $700 in rebates for the home installation of that. But I think, Jason, neither you nor Hugh have home chargers. You just do the 120 at home. Is that right?
Yeah, but I'm really glad to know that, because the reason I don't do the 220 is because it's basically $15 a foot to run cable. And for me, I have to run it 150 feet. So I don't want to spend that kind of money. But hearing this, okay, that at least pulls down the price a little bit. I didn't know that you could get a rebate for installing a 220. Okay, good to know.
And we could follow up with you, Jason, too, and everybody when we put this on YouTube to insert the name of the charger and if he has any other information about the rebate process that he went through. But Hugh, you just use the regular old plug-in as well, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
So when you guys, I leave it charging overnight. I drive out from West LA to Laverne 2-3 times a week, trickle charging. As long as you just remember to keep plugging it in, it basically does it for me. I'll occasionally stop and supplement at one of the Tesla chargers, but basically it works for me for the most part. I also live around the corner from the 220. I have 220s that I can use around the corner.
Okay, great. I've got a question. Oh, sorry, Hugh, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. We just have it on a timed charger at night. So we charge during the low rates, time when the rates are a little bit lower, and you can override that if you need to. And ultimately, if I am commuting on a regular basis into Pasadena, I have a place where I can park and then plug it in there. So I would have plenty of charge to get back.
And you feel like just that charger, just the regular old plug-in, is adequate for giving you a full charge, or it ties you over to when you're parked at one of the more robust chargers? Or
if we've depleted our range completely, it takes probably a solid 10 hours or so to charge it. Overnight, that's fine. If we wanted to be able to use it again after we've depleted it 3 hours later, then it would be a problem. But so far, that hasn't been an issue.
what about for you, Jason? Do you feel like at home with the Tesla, with the sort of size of the battery, that you can get away with just the regular old charger, or do you need to really supplement when you get to work or when you get to another destination?
So I have a 40-mile commute, so that's 80 miles round trip. I can get away with it if I go in 3 days a week. If I wanted to go in 4 days a week, I'd have to supplement. I mean, mine, I don't run it down to zero, but man, 0 to full on mine, on the trickle charge, probably looking at like 60 hours, more even, because like maybe 60 hours minimum to get it. But I never go 0 to full, I keep it within, always sort of between 100 and 250.
Okay, that's good to know. And I'm going to ask the question that I feel like people don't like being asked about electric cars, which is how long does it take and how far does that get you? I feel like that can be a complicated question based on how much you fill how much you charge it and what your commute looks like. But can you give us like a general sense for the two of you what that looks like?
Sure. So when we first got the car, the maximum range, all electric, was about, I think, 44 miles or something like that. And of course, it depends on how you drive and where you drive it and all those things. For whatever reason, so the car will recalculate what your maximum charge is based on your driving habits. So we're now up to 49 miles when we've got a full charge. And that takes about 10 hours from 0. If we've depleted the battery completely, it takes about 10 hours to put that in.
Yeah. I basically don't like that question because like when I am down, like, let's say below 50, and I go to a supercharger, a Tesla supercharger, I plug in, I'll get 600 miles of charge per hour. When I plug in, I'm down at like 50 or whatever. And I get like over 100, it's like 500, 400. And then as you start approaching a full charge, it goes down to, like 100 and even down to 50. So I just don't do that. I don't charge it to all the way full, which they tell you shouldn't do anyway because it's just not good for battery life. So that's why I say I kind of hover between the 100 and 250. I just kind of, or 50 to 250. I just kind of keep it in there. And if I'm doing a long trip, and I could stop once to recharge, instead I'll stop twice. Because if I let it get almost to nothing and then try to stop just once and let it fully charge, I could do that. If you want to stop and have a meal, then yeah, I'd do that. If you're gonna have a meal, it's gonna take about 45 minutes. But instead of waiting 45 minutes on one stop, I could do 2 10-minute stops and get pretty much the same amount of charge. Because again, if you're charging from 50 to 150, that's gonna take way less time than if you're charging from 200 to 300, let's say. So that's why I kind of reject that question, because you're not really in the position too often, at least with the Tesla, to be kind of near 0 and to charge all the way to 300. It's just not how you should be driving the car.
Right, great. Okay, so I've got like 2 more questions, and we'll switch to audience questions. But Hugh, I have a question about sort of like the technical aspects of the plug-in hybrid, which came up a bit in the video, but can you talk about how that works, if there's like a mode where it's all electric or a mode where it's hybrid, power, and how you toggle between those 2 modes based upon your use?
Sure. Yeah. One of the features, I guess I'd call it a feature, of the plug-in hybrid is that there are a lot of modes in which you can drive. For some people, it might be too many modes. But the basic ones are you can have all EV be the default, and you can drive into just an EV until you run out of charge, and then it automatically goes into the hybrid mode. The way we drive it is if we're around town, we put it in EV. If we're going onto the freeway, we usually put it in hybrid mode because it's more efficient there. And then we'll switch out of it when we get back on, if we've gotten to our destination, if we're going to LA or something like that. It recharges much better and kind of keeps the battery relatively charged if you're driving the city. There are, on top of that, there's also an eco mode, and there's a sport mode, and there's a trail mode. And you kind of can get lots of permutations to the point where it almost gets a little bit ridiculous. But it really does improve the drivability, and it kind of helps you if you're going off-road or if you really want to charge around and be sporty in it to switch over.
Did that take a minute to sort of get used to those different settings and figure out what works best for your driving situation?
It did. I haven't really explored all the options and kind of played with it too much. My basic mode, and I figured this out pretty quickly, it wasn't too hard, was you have the default be EV when you turn it on, and then you just be aware of when you're getting into a situation where it's going to be better to drive in the hybrid, you just push a button and it automatically switches over to that.
Okay, great. And then I've got one more question, and then again, I'll shift gears here. So I just wanted to know a little bit more about the charging stations and how, when you're out and about, you know where they are so that you don't get stranded or whatever. So I believe that for Tesla, it's sort of integrated into the interface of the dash display. Maps where you can sort of pull up which stations are where. Is that the same for the plug-in hybrid, or do we know if that's the same for other electric vehicles, or is that unique to Tesla?
There are websites or apps now that provide that information. The one that I use is called PlugShare, and it seems to be pretty accurate information about what's available out there, and including whether or not it's being used right now. Toyota has one that comes with the car or with the Toyota app. I don't find it as useful as the PlugShare, but all of at least the PlugShare identifies all the ones in Claremont that I'm aware of, and does give you kind of real-time information about whether it's available.
Yeah, so the Tesla, one thing I like, I'm always putting in my destination just because I'm using the autopilot, but most people do that anyway, just for the navigation. But if you put in a destination that's beyond the current range of the charge you have, it automatically navigates you to the most efficient Tesla charging station along the way. And it tells you how many stalls are available and so on. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll just type into navigation, just EV chargers, and then every EV charger will come up, including the non-Tesla ones. But I'm glad to get that recommendation, Hugh, because PlugShare, I wasn't using that one. That's I'll use that if I'm ever in an area where there aren't the Tesla chargers.
Yeah.
And what's the, is there what does it cost? So you go to one of these charging stations. Is there different rates at different stations, or are you paying through an app, or are you paying with your credit card? What's the payment structure look like?
Yeah, it varies a lot. Actually, the only places that I've plugged in so far have been free. So Ontario Airport has free electric charging, and the parking garage in Pasadena that I go to has free electric charging. Of course, you have to pay a parking fee to park there, but it's still, the charging's free. I don't really know what the costs are for the commercial ones. I haven't utilized one yet, so I'm not sure how much it is.
It's a commodity, obviously. So, you pay based, when you charge, it'll tell you how much per kilowatt. And when I go even though I don't do this, but let's say I was to go with 0 to a Tesla supercharger and charge it all the way to full. My guess is that would probably cost about 25 bucks. I don't know. What do you think, Robert? Does that sound right? For 300 miles of charge, 25 bucks. That's, I think, what it would be at a supercharger.
See Robert shaking his head in agreement. So still significantly less than were you to pick up, you know.
Oh yeah,
Right.
and of course you charge at your home, and it's cheaper than that. And I mean, you charge at night, like Hugh was saying, and so oh yeah, it's significant, especially if you're careful. Significant fuel savings. Absolutely.
You do have to be careful. Some of the private owned charging stations that you may stop at, and you want to look at your app, can be the same price as gas or even more. So you do want to be careful.
That's good to know. And I see Karen Rosenthal in the comments said Target in Portland has free stations with a limit on time. And I see that too in a couple of different parking structures around here, what looks like a time limit. I don't know.
Oh yeah, the thing that'll kill you is if you don't come back, especially at the supercharger. And I totally agree with this policy they have, where if you stay beyond your charging, like after you're fully charged, they start charging you like $5 a minute, which I agree with, because we don't want people sitting there taking up space when someone else is waiting.
Okay, great. So a couple quick questions and comments that I saw come up in the chat box. So first was just about charging. If you don't have an outdoor outlet in the front of your home, can you just run a regular old extension cord to plug in your hybrid, or is that frowned upon, or is that something that you do, Hugh or Jason?
Ours is plugged into just a regular 120 outlet in our garage. I guess I'm not going to comment on whether or not you should plug it into an extension cord. I'm not sure if that's safe, but I imagine it would be.
Well, you can do an extension cord, not a regular one. That's dangerous. But I have this, I don't know, I'm not an electrician, but a really thick one. No, don't use a regular extension cord, for sure. Very dangerous. But you know, a lot of things are expensive. It's not that expensive to run a outlet to outdoor. I don't have a garage, so I've charged it in the driveway, and it's not expensive to have an outlet installed on the outside of your house, as long as you have electric running somewhere near there. So I think that's a relatively minimal expense. You could run an extension cord, but make sure you get, I can pull it out. I forget what it's called, but the one that can carry a heavy charge and isn't going to light on fire.
Right, and presumably they make ones that are, quite a bit longer.
And it's more like, I'm not an electrician, but like how it can carry the charge without lighting on fire, and it's not expensive. Cost me like 15 bucks or something for that.
Okay, great. And then I see a comment from Steve M, who said, would love to learn how many people use solar to charge their cars in Claremont. The price per watt is down $1 per watt, so about 15 to 30K for systems, or 10 to 20K for DIY systems. Do any of you have solar or like a battery wall that you use to supplement or to charge your cars?
We don't, but we opted into the green power, so it's all of our power ostensibly is renewable, but no, we don't have solar in our house.
I don't, but I'm in the market for it. So far, everyone who's come out, because I've got a lot of trees and I back onto an apartment building, I don't have that much sunlight. So far, everyone who's come out, I don't know, doesn't sound good how much energy I'd be able to generate with all the trees in the apartment building. But I'm in the market. If Sustainable Claremont wants to send someone my way, I'm in the market for that.
We'll send someone your way for sure. Actually, we'll send Peter Koya your way, who was a member of our Green Home Tour, and he actually had a system set up where he had a pretty robust solar array, and coupled with a Tesla wall or whatever they're called, that he would use at night to charge his vehicle. So it was sort of
nice,
the exact system that we're talking about.
Right.
Great. A couple more comments from the thread here. I don't have anything to add to this. This seems like it could be its own dialogue that would be interesting and important. It says, what are the environmental costs of battery production, human costs? Have either of you have any familiarity with that or know about sort of the secondary market for the batteries or production, or how, the environmental toll that takes?
Not enough to really, I know what's in the popular press, but not a deep dive.
Yeah, that's where I am too. Just enough to kind of know that when you buy a new vehicle, that has a big environmental footprint too. And if you have a really fuel efficient combustion engine, the most environmentally sensitive move might be to drive that for a little bit. But that's all. I don't have anything beyond that.
Yeah, Robert.
There we go. Actually, if it's true with the 1,000,000-mile battery that Elon Musk is coming out with, the announcement on the stat should be any day. But the battery itself is supposed to be 100%. It can be broken down. So it's supposed to be a whole new future in battery productions, especially the fact that they're going to guarantee it for 1,000,000 miles. So it's a whole new breakthrough of that it can be recycled, as well as that the range of it. I mean, no offense, but one of the big problems, and I've owned everything from the Prius to the Volt to the Mercedes B-Class to the Model 3, and now any day that hopefully a Y will show up in my driveway. Now they just dump them off in front of your house and you figure it out. But has been some of the battery problems my dean at my college is facing. He has a Leaf, and for a new battery pack, 135-mile range, he had to decide whether to scrap the car or drop $8,000. And this is a huge problem, but I view if you don't invest in this, it can't take that jump. But my B-Class, after 3 years, which was the Mercedes, went to the scrapyard. So it really wasn't super green. My Volt was recalled. So the earlier ones had some problems, but like Jason, moving through electric cars over the years and ending up with a Tesla, they really dialed it in and it actually works.
Thanks for adding that, Robert. Yeah, and there's in the chat box I dropped a link from Carbon Brief, which does really good work on this, and I believe Carbon Switch, another organization, both have done life cycle assessments on electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, regular hybrids, and your average internal combustion vehicle. And I think there's some difference, obviously depending on where you live based upon the type of power that's being generated. But I think the overall takeaway from those life cycle assessments is that, electric vehicles are, better for the environment, right? Better if we could ride our bikes and walk and take public transportation, but comparing internal combustion to electric vehicles, I think the answer is fairly clear at this point. Another comment, which I think I sort of just spoke to, has anyone performed some qualitative analysis of cost per mile for a full EV versus a plug-in hybrid or an internal combustion vehicle? Sort of a cost per mile. Hugh or Jason or Robert, do you know of any information out there or a place we might be able to find something like that?
So not offhand, not anything specific, but to Robert's point from before, if you Google a question like that, there are so many chat rooms, threads, things with people talking about this that really like to get into the details about this. So I think you can probably find the information. But I guess one of the things that really comes into play is the way you drive it, where you drive it, what conditions you drive it in. So it's kind of hard, I think, to compare on an apples to apples basis.
When I bought the Tesla, and I'm not a shill for any corporation, but I did think it was cute that the woman that showed me to the car, she says, "Welcome to the electric revolution." And that's good corporate propaganda. I mean, I like it as a leftist environmentalist too, but I do kind of believe that like, because I keep cars forever. Like I've had 3 cars in my life, each one for almost 20 years. So I want to be ready as we transition to clean energy sources to be part of the network of vehicles that can plug in to that. And while right now, certainly if you keep a car for a very long time, that decreases your environmental impact. And so my plan is to do that and to be ready when all the the negative externalities of the electric vehicles kind of are reduced as we get onto the clean energy grid. So I don't know, maybe that's like glorifying it too much, but I do feel like you are taking a step in the direction of nudging the world toward a transit infrastructure and network that is powered with clean energy.
Here's another side benefit, and Jason was kind of moving on to that. And I don't know if Jason's had the same experience, but our Model 3s are about the same age. You never take them in for service. So all those oil changes, flushing your radiator, spark plugs, all that goes away. You don't have that. So all that expense, the time, it's all gone. Even I believe the average changing of your brake pads will be about 7 years on most of these cars. So you have to put that into the cost. It's not just gas, it's the maintenance of these cars. And our Teslas are like iPhones. It's the first car that got better with age, that Jason could talk about that, how the computer, when it saw the cars sort of, moved around, it was glitchy. And it's incredible now. And with every update, at least most of the updates, it's like your iPhone or your whatever, phone you have, how it gets better and better. And it's the first car that over 3 years has really gotten a lot better. And how many people could say they've owned a car for 3 years and have never done a service or had to change anything on their car?
That's true. Yeah. When she showed me to the car and I drove off, I stopped right away. I said, "Oh, wait, one question. Where do I take it for service?" And she said, "There's no service." That's been true. It's been 3.5 years and I haven't taken it for anything in 3.5 years. You just have to buy the windshield wiper fluid to fill up the little, that's it.
So is there really no service requirements? There's no brake pads, there's no, what is is there like a 5-year, 10-year, whatever suggested service, or no?
I change my tires and I pour that washer fluid in.
Right.
That's it. Never been to service it. Wouldn't know where to go, or it's crazy. It's just like crazy.
Right. Interesting. And Hugh, for the plug-in hybrid, I sort of suspect it's like the hybrid that I have. We have a Prius where it's just sort of like a regular car maintenance schedule. Is that right?
It is. Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about maintenance, it is definitely, the hybrid is the one to compare it to. I believe, this is based on the experience of having a hybrid before, that hybrids tend to have less maintenance than purely internal combustion engines. And again, I'm not a shill for a particular corporation, but we've had a lot of success with Toyotas. They do seem to be very reliable.
All right, great. And then another question that was in the chat. Does the noiseless operation of the EV or the hybrid become a problem with pedestrians, or do you feel like there's some sort of noise, or is that something that you even think about? Like, how does the noise level factor into the experience?
Yeah, that's an issue. But that's been an issue forever. That was an issue with my Prius 20 years ago. That I first noticed that issue when when they started making the Lexus. Speaking of Toyotas, I always drove Toyotas, Hugh, before I got the Tesla. And the Lexus was so quiet, full combustion engine, but I started noticing that my dad had one. And that was the first time I noticed, oh, you actually like can't assume that people are going to hear you when you're driving that car. And it was certainly true for the Prius. And yeah, it's even more true for the Tesla. You have to be aware of that.
California law now makes them make noise. So Jason and my Tesla are perfectly silent. But if you get a new one, or the Audi, my sister has the Audi, so not just Tesla, my family has a whole bunch. They all sort of make this weird humming sound when they're at low speeds. So now pedestrians can hear them because they were a little dangerous.
Yeah, ours in backup mode, it definitely makes a noise. And I think under 20 miles an hour, it makes a slightly different noise, but it is enough for pedestrians to know something's there.
Actually, as a distance runner for actually almost 30 years, every single car makes noise. The tires, you can hear the tires almost 200 a quarter mile away sometimes. So, and a bicyclist, I can hear every car that comes up behind me, unfortunately. Usually within few inches of me, but so. But I do remember the first time I drove a friend's Prius. It was a Sunday morning, and I came to a stoplight and had the windows open, and I could hear birds singing. And it was like, that was the most amazing thing. It's like, I couldn't hear the engine. I just heard the birds. So, it sold me right then and there.
Yeah, that's like great insight. And Hugh, I sort of noticed when we were filming your vehicle that that when you were in the backup mode, it did make a sort of odd humming noise that Eddie and I both looked at one another, not knowing what it was, but it sounds like that's sort of a feature that's now included on, when in that full electric mode.
Yeah, I think it is. It is a weird noise. I mean, the first time we heard it, I looked up to see if there were spaceships coming or something, but it's enough for people to notice it. And I think it probably helps, particularly in parking lots when you're backing up.
Great. And then another question I've got, sorry, the night is from Helen Brooks, a question about the disposal of batteries. I think we tried to kind of talk about this before, but I think this is really an appropriate topic for its own dialogue on batteries and sort of how they're used and how they're disposed of. But let me just ask the question: once the life of the car is over, where do they dispose of the batteries used by the car? Do we know if you do need to have your batteries replaced, or once the car has sort of met its end, sort of secondary purposes for those? I know, Robert, you were mentioning that there's some in development that are completely recyclable, but do you know what the plan is now for those or how they're being used?
Yeah, different cars have different things. When I bought one of their early Volts, and apparently when I bought it, they said that when the batteries reached a certain point, they weren't good for cars, but they would be used on the grid in California and other places to help power the grid. How that works, I don't know. But apparently, one of the big things, at least that I've looked at when I was looking into Tesla, was what happens to the battery? What is the green footprint of my car? And I don't want to be quoted on this. I'm not sure. I think it's 80-something% like that it can be broken down and reused. It's pretty high. And then the big push right now, which is that Texas plant that just reopened, they're talking about being able to break down this battery 100%, which seems kind of crazy to me, but it's so impressive that they will be able to do that. But it has affected things. I teach ceramics, and in the ceramics world, the pressure, and they're moving away from a lot of the precious minerals. If you're talking about cars, you have to talk about some of that and what a lithium mine looks like. And I encourage people to Google with lithium. But if you look at what aluminum, how that's made, it's not pretty either. But a lot of materials we use for other things, even your glazes, things for your sinks, things like that. Use strontium, use materials that you can't get. It's very hard to get anymore because the car companies have gobbled up the mines. So there is sort of this weird outreaching effect on the demand for this. And that's why there's a big push for less metals, less cobalt in batteries, less lithium. And there's some great new research that's being done, and it's really pushing things like this, that really pushing a recyclable battery, a greener battery. And like I said earlier, I had a wonderful dean who said it when I bought the Volt, that sometimes somebody has to invest if you want them in the future.
All right, thanks for that. Great. As we sort of wrap up here, we've just got a couple minutes left. Give me 1 second to scroll through and make sure I didn't miss any questions. I think that we're just going to put on pause any more discussion about the batteries, and I'm going to see if we can't find somebody, an expert in the field, to kind of come talk to us about that. I think that'd be a great talk. If there are no more questions, let me check and make sure. Karen Rosenthal, I think you had your hand up at some point in the past and I didn't get to you. Did you get your question answered, or did you want to unmute yourself?
No, but I believe that you asked a question and I raised my hand in response to it. I can't remember what the question was. I did forget to say that I do have solar, but we also have a Tesla battery wall. So we can charge it at midnight and it's just draining from the batteries. We do not have to rely on the active solar panels as it's doing. And I can't believe how little gas that we have purchased in the last 2 years, year and a half, and we've put 17,000 miles on that car. So we've done a lot of driving on we have the Toyota Prime. First year it came out, 2021, and love it. And we only have one car now. We don't even have 2 cars anymore.
Fully powered by the sun. That's pretty amazing.
Yep.
That's great. Great, thank you for that.
Yep.
All right, so we're approaching the 8 o'clock hour. Jason, Robert, Hugh, do you have any final thoughts before we close out here?
Yeah, I guess maybe I would just comment that, I think this technology is definitely an improvement. We're not going to become a carless society anytime soon. But none of this is a panacea. They're still resource intensive. They still take up a lot of room. Cars are still dangerous. Pedestrians are being killed. So it's not, I made reference in the film to our transportation system and some of the issues with that. So I think this is a good step in the right direction. I think the technology is coming around very quickly. It's reducing energy use. But there are still definitely issues that we're going to face. I also feel like it's really important not to be too judgmental of people that make their choices about cars. We all have to live together and find a way to live together. Some of us, for whatever reasons of what our situation is, we have to make practical choices. And so one of those practical choices is our personal transportation. So anyway, it's a great, interesting field of technological change.
I'd just say something you said earlier, Stuart. We have these cross-cutting forces. Like, on the one hand, we should drive less, and we should take transit, and we should walk, and we should make pedestrian-friendly zones, and we should cycle. And then on the other axis, cars are so awesome. Like, everyone who's talking about this car here, their car, they love their car. And all the way up and down the price scale, the cars are good. All the cars are getting better and better and better at a time when we need to actually get out of cars. So I don't really have anything bigger to say than that, but it's like, we're like trying to stop our drinking habit, but like the booze just keeps getting better and better, And it's just an interesting, like, cross-cutting I don't know, contradiction that we're dealing with. And I don't have anything more to say than that, just an observation.
All right, great. Robert, did you have anything else to say, or you good? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much to the three of you for lending your time and your expertise, and for everybody who joined us tonight. We're hoping in the future to do another one of these for e-bikes, and then, as we said earlier, maybe one on batteries, which I think is very important discussion as well. Last sort of business stuff to take care of. A big thanks to Edison International and to Plug in America for helping us, have the resources to put this event on such a quick turnaround time. And then the last thing to say is that to help us do more of these in the future, we have this post event survey that my colleague Hans has put into the chat box here. If you're able to do that, I know these can be annoying, but it's really helpful for us, and it helps us get the resources to keep doing these. So if you would take a couple minutes to take that survey, we'd be greatly appreciative of you for doing that. So thank you all so much for attending. Hope to see you at Earth Day next Sunday, or this coming Sunday, and maybe at our fundraiser party tomorrow night. And everyone have a great rest of your evening. Thank you all.